Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Can you raise your hand if you can't hear me? Okay, that was good. Okay. I'll try to speak up. I'm mic'd so that we can have it also on the recording side. Thank you so much for coming here today. Welcome in person to the office. Thank you everyone for attending virtually. My name is Sha Huang. I am the COO here at Nava. I'm also one of the co-founders. I use he, him pronouns. I feel very lucky to be here with you all today and see everyone who's been able to come out, able to make it in person, everyone, all the folks online dialing in. My dad, I think, is watching on the live stream. So hi, Dad. Yeah. Thank you for your interest in American democracy and the history of Ben Franklin and the visits to DC and things. For those of you who are joining us in the office or virtually in person for the first time, welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending time with us. For those of you who've been at past events, welcome back. Thank you. For those of you who aren't as familiar about who we are or aren't as familiar with Nava in general, I want to spend a little bit of time to talk to you about Nava, and then we'll talk about what we have to cover later today. Nava is a public benefit corporation. We got our start out of a challenging time over 10 years ago now. Myself and the other co-founders of Nava working as a team to help rescue healthcare.gov. Since then, we have partnered with government agencies across the country, from federal to state to local level agencies, operating in both crisis moments and in moments of reflection, under tight legislative deadlines and under national scrutiny, in service of our mission, our deep belief that in helping millions of households access critical benefits, in helping civil servants and field offices and caseworkers save valuable time and labor, in helping agencies operate with more adaptable and resilient foundations, we can support our public institutions' ability to continually earn the trust of the publics that they serve. So as a public benefit corporation, we have a fiduciary responsibility to our mission, right? It's not just words on a page. Which is to help make government services simple, effective, and accessible to all. We also have a responsibility as a PBC to regularly report on the progress against that mission. So you have, I think some folks have the report in their hands. We have that available for you this afternoon, tonight. Oh my God. Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Mike. Tonight is a bit of a snapshot of that, putting faces to stories, faces to agencies, faces to efforts, and language around the real work that's happened over the last several years that's led to the report today. The theme of this year's report and today's event is improving every level of service delivery. If you know me, or if you know other folks at Nava, you know that we are systems nerds. A core reference for us is Donella Meadows. Her piece, Leverage Points, Places to Intervene in a System. And our public benefit report is organized across 3 layers correlating to our theory of change. From making those kind of like small focused updates, sweating the details and how the details add up, to improving really end-to-end service delivery and taking a human-centered system integrator approach and perspective on outcomes and impact, to ultimately how we contribute to healthier ecosystems from the ground up. How do we help contribute to charging that flywheel between, for example, federal and state efforts across the country? In other words, it's all interconnected. From a field office worker poring over minutia over someone's claim, to a worker receiving the notification of their claim being approved and managing their benefits through a portal that whole teams work to build, to the federal efforts that provide guidance and resources and shared services to promote a healthy ecosystem across the country. We take that very seriously as an organization, and we've intentionally organized to operate across levels of government. It has confused other people about Nava in the past. People have asked us, well, are you a CMS contractor or a VA contractor? Are you a UI vendor or something else? But when someone is trying to get access to SNAP to help them pay for groceries, they could care less about whether the state is county administered or not, or that FNS and CMS have conflicting guidance about how to format and submit their data, right? People care about results, not org charts or cabinet level division or the difference between rules and regs or statutory, things like that. At Nava, working across all levels of government has been deeply important to us, and our experience at the federal level, for example, we believe can help us support states navigating this conflicting compliance, while our experience at the state level can help inform new federal playbooks, practices, and services. So we're proud to be able to highlight several examples of that, and you'll hear more about that later from our editorial manager, Kira, as well as our exciting panel of distinguished guests. So the last point I want to make before I turn it over is that we also care very deeply about the knitting between policy and implementation. The gap between policy making and policy implementation often results in service delivery experiences that don't match the intentions and hopes of policymakers. And we've been building our experience, exploring our out in front to help kind of knit these perspectives together. Our philanthropically funded arm, Nava Labs, is focused on prototyping policy and systems change within government programs, rigorously measuring and evaluating the impact of these pilots, and if successful, advocating for their adoption. We believe, and one of our values is, we believe that this approach prioritizes impact over ideology. This is something deeply important and critical for us. And in other words, centering policy on human impacts can guide implementers towards long-term success. So that's our theme for the public benefit report for this year and for today's event. We're trying to operate and improve across every level of service delivery, and doing so by bridging across levels of government and across levels of policy and implementation. In terms of a quick overview, we'll have a short presentation by Aaron Couch, Principal Software Engineer at Nava, on our platform initiative, which has helped us kickstart new projects by providing engineers with project templates, packages, platforms that has so far saved some of our project teams weeks to months worth of time to get started and get moving. We'll then take a short break and return for our main panel of distinguished speakers. So I'll now pass it over to Aaron to get us started. Welcome, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I'm going to ask the same question. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm going to try and project as much as I can. Yeah, my name is Aaron Couch. My pronouns are he and him. I'm excited to talk to you today about the Nava platform and how the Nava platform helps accelerate the work that we do at Nava, and more importantly, the delivery of human-centered outcomes for the people we serve. A little bit about me. I'm a principal engineer here at Nava. I currently live in Philly with my partner and several chickens. I've been a contributor to civic technology projects for over 15 years. I started out when socials were MySpace and participated in some of the protests that inspired Twitter. My most significant contribution before Nava has been with open data. I worked on data.gov and a dozen of state and federal open data projects and created DCAN, a data catalog that was used by over 100 governments in 35 countries. The DCAN project was big in Japan. Yeah. That was a fun aspect of it. Had a large footprint in Germany as well. But one of the more profound elements of the project is that at one point in time, both Russia and the Ukraine were using the project. They both had open data catalogs running the same open source software. We all know that software itself can't solve people and geopolitical issues in itself, but in a world that creates too many walls and artificial boundaries, open source and civic technology projects can create connections and community that can cross parochial and even national boundaries. So yeah, I'm here to talk to you about one of the most exciting projects that I've had a pleasure of contributing to. Shah just was touching on the kind of difference between theory and practice. Throughout my journey, I've navigated that spectrum between theory and practice. I've written articles, blog posts, op-eds on the theory side. But I found that I'm myself more at home with action often. Let's build it. I'm an engineer. So this project puts some of the best practices in action in a way that I think more people should know about. So I'm excited to tell you about it here today. The Nava platform creates a culture of community, and community around reuse and continuous improvement that I believe is a model for companies and government agencies. The Nava platform consists of 4 open source templates, an infrastructure template that can build multi-account AWS infrastructure managed by Terraform modules, a Flask template that is tailored for APIs. For those of you not familiar with APIs, that's the data layer. APIs provide data between front-end apps and back-end processes. APIs are very friendly. If you ask for the data, they'll give it to you as long as you ask for it in the right way. If you don't, you'll get a 404, which can be very embarrassing. There's a React template built on Next.js that is ideal for both ambitious and easy to use user interfaces, and a template that is both back-end and front-end, built on the extremely fast to develop and stable Rails framework. The purpose of the Nava platform is to go fast and not break things. In other words, to accelerate development, adopt best practices and workflows, and security. With the platform, we can spin up projects quickly, which includes the ability to rapidly prototype solutions. But unlike many prototypes that are built, and I'm certainly guilty myself of throwing together a UI for a demo that looks slick. Some of them don't look slick, but it ultimately is far from generally useful. But prototypes developed with the Nava platform are built on a scalable foundation. The platform has saved months of time and can help avoid mistakes and adopt best practice. Whether it's software or any other endeavor, you never get it right the first time. And my backyard and house is full of projects that stand as a testament to that. But this fact is built into the Agile process, of course. We keep iterating until we get it right. But with the platform, many of the features have already gone through some of that iteration. And so creating this matrix for reuse and shared tooling drives the impact. So to illustrate how this works, let's walk through starting a new project. The idea of starting a new project for many in this room may create a sense of calm. Take a deep breath. Imagine you have a blank canvas. Or for others of you, it might create a sense of panic. Oh no, not again. We have so much work to do. But picture, if you will, a federal or state level project with a 1 to 3 year delivery commitment that could either be a new service or a modernization effort for an existing system. The current state of web and cloud tech provides great building blocks. Maybe your company or agency has best practices established or ways of working. There are lots of great building blocks out there, a lot of great places to start. AWS has over 200 services that for the most part speak seamlessly together. And even for the ones that do, I heard a couple chuckles because it's worse than that, but you know, even for the ones that do, you need a way to deploy them. You need a way to manage infrastructure as code, GitOps, the deployment glue, so on and so forth. There are a lot of quality templates and starter kits out there for different activities, like your project setup, whether that be GitHub or GitLab. There are Terraform templates with modules for different services. However, none of them have strong adoption or are not focused for government use cases. There are services like Gruntwork, for example, that have built business out of modularizing the cloud. However, that specific service starts at 40,000 a year and only addresses a small part of the need. So then you're locked into a vendor and now you have two problems. For applications, there are Next.js and React starter templates and starter kits. The US web design system has a number of really great integration libraries and examples for tools like React and Drupal and Rails and Django. And many in this room has contributed to those projects, and we use some of those in the Nava template. So the goal of the Nava template is to start the project ready to launch. If it's not clear, that is a Lego robot. So we're going to continue with the Lego metaphor. The rocket is especially apropos because the templates don't contain the payload or the and are flexible for whatever mission our shared project is going to launch. But the templates will help you get to the 11.2 kilometers per second that will need to leave Earth orbit. So how do we do that? With flexible and modular pieces that are pre-assembled, but also flexible enough for a wide variety of needs and applications. And we've got our fuselage there, still Lego. The infrastructure template is the foundation for the Nava platform. So, you know, we're still on this journey. We're starting a new project together. Folks would typically pick the Rails project, the Rails template, which I mentioned, is front end, back end, or we could choose the Python API and React front end template for our project. So what would that get us? Let's say for our new project, we're going to go with the Rails template, and let's take a look at what we get. Our blank canvas is now an app and infrastructure that is ready for action. We'll go into a little detail on the services and operations in this diagram, but for the non-technical folks in the audience, trust me, that's impressive. What the diagram represents is an infrastructure built to deliver services focused on the Nava's mission that are simple. Again, and Nava's mission is to deliver services that are simple, effective, and accessible to all. So the CI/CD pipeline, infrastructure as code, and feature flags help us to deploy frequently and consistently, which is a bedrock of agile delivery. At Nava, we measure the time to deployment and deployment frequency of our projects. And in most of our projects are pushing code to production on an at least weekly basis. The application load balancer and container-based architecture ensure that the applications are scalable and available to users. We all know that government services experience too much downtime. I've experienced that personally, and I've read too many calls for proposals detailing the problem. And we all know, we all agree we can do better. Out-of-the-box incident management service integration helps ensure that the processes as well as the systems are resilient. And the security best practices are going to help us get to production faster by implementing security controls, having those already in place, and then ensuring that the data of our users is secure. So the Rails app out of the box includes a fully functioning website that is accessible, fully accessible, and integrates with the US web design system. USWDS often trips me up. And additionally, for our projects, we get all of these goodies. So I sense a calming in the room. Now our blank canvas is looking pretty good. Who else is excited? Let's go build. So our project lived happily ever after. As I mentioned, the infrastructure is the foundation of the work. So let's take a little bit of a deep dive into the system. So the infra template consists of 5 layers: an account layer, network, database, service, and CI/CD. So the network layer is like the castle walls, depending against, we're switching metaphors, by the way, defending against anyone who wants to get in and out. So it consists of a virtual private network, the outermost castle wall, as well as an encryption layer that keeps communication secure coming in and out of the castle. You could think of that as the royal stamp that the king or queen would put on correspondence, but hopefully our encryption is more secure than that. So within the castle walls are public and private subnets, which you could think of as the public and private areas within the castle. There's also a NAT gateway, and that stands for network address translation. So you could think of that as, and that's used to communicate within and outside of the network securely. So you could think of that as the correspondence between the royal court and the foreign lands. The network configuration is extremely flexible within the infra template. So you can use a shared network or different networks between environments. And this was especially useful for us. I'm on the grants.gov project because we started off with a shared network and moved to a more secure setup with multiple environments, multiple networks per environment as we shifted to a more production setup. The account layer is the layer that's responsible for determining who's allowed to come in and out of the castle. So if you've seen Mining Python's Holy Grail, you might remember a pretty effective account management system which denied entrance to King Arthur out of the castle wall. So in action, what this account layer does is it makes sure that only certain activities can come in and out. A bedrock of that is our CI/CD pipeline, in which GitHub is the task runner that anytime we merge code into our repository, anytime you see a dev click merge, or maybe click merge yourself, we need a secure way to get information in and out of our system. And we use OpenID Connect in order to authenticate between GitHub and a privileged account. The account layer also is flexible, and that's the thing. This is part of the kind of secret sauce here with the platform, is that it's flexible enough for a lot of different government use cases. We never get the same exact access. We never get the same exact account setup. So the platform is designed to create that foundation that allows us to work within these multifaceted environments, but do it quickly and deliver to the services that we need to quickly. And finally, there's the service and database layers that are the meat and potatoes, so to speak, that support the applications and processes that power our services. So how do these features get developed? Where do they come from? Let's take a look at the workflow for new platform features. Each platform template has a GitHub repository where we build in the open. The contributors to the template are devs on individual project teams who typically create the first iteration of a feature. Devs at Nava are pretty much 100% focused on their project work and outcomes. So there are dedicated platform team staff to help pull examples and best practices out of the platform repos. Features are typically developed on the projects, and they have some commonalities, but are again in different contexts. So among those, best practices emerge. So to take an example, out of a recent feature that was added to the platform, there was we have a feature in the platform that uploads a file, processes it, and passes it on to whatever your kind of data pipeline is. So the feature was developed independently. Best practices came out of the examples and lessons learned. Feedback and discussion happened on Slack and GitHub, and that new feature was added to the platform. Now that after that was added to the platform, this upload and processing feature is available for other product teams, which is a huge win. On our grants.gov team, we experienced a number of these kind of wins where we're plugging ahead, we're on our sprints, and all of a sudden we have a new feature that we knew was on our roadmap, and we kind of got it for free. And you might think it's 2024. Haven't we conquered file uploads? But within the cloud and to run secure processes off of that, there are half a dozen services involved, and the orchestration of those is could take a sprint or so to set up. So that's time back that we can spend on other features. And again, part of the art of the platform work is to make things flexible for different scenarios. So this new feature in the platform supports scenario where you might not an ETL job where you don't own, another team owns the file store, or it might be one that is in your network, and there's some flexibility around tasks for low frequency ETL batch jobs and high frequency real-time applications. Within the GitHub repo, a new features are released, and this is an example of that. And you can see for these features, the service and CI/CD layers were affected, and in this case, a new identity provider and end-to-end tests are available to the projects that use the feature. So one other example of how a feature makes it into the platform, and some of the ways in which we get that added benefit of this kind of community task and work is for grants.gov, the project I'm on, and we got some other members out there. We are using the Next.js React template, and about a year and a half ago, the Next itself released a new way of routing and organizing code, and we were like, hey, do we want to take advantage of that or not? We have some smart folks on our team, but the platform team had already started to think through this. They created some pros and cons. They created some documentation around the pros and cons, and helped us think through, this makes sense for us, and ultimately did. One cool thing about that interaction is that so the templates are open. one of the core maintainers of Next and VP of product at Vercel, which supports Next, jumped in and addressed some of our concerns about the upgrade. So, a maintainer of the most popular React framework in the world was able to weigh in on that feature. So that was pretty cool. And then a bonus feature with this platform work from a dev perspective is that it makes cross-team collaboration much more easy and effective. And devs can kind of jump between projects, having had time and expertise with the tools that we're using on the project. So a couple case studies for some of the impact that we've seen. Grants.gov is a modernization effort that I mentioned I'm a part of. $3 billion a year in grant opportunities come through the system. And it's a modernization effort that is long overdue. With the help of the platforms, we were able to get an initial site launch in a month. We were able to get a significant security clearance within 6 months, around 6 months, and we saved an estimated 12 weeks on development. It's impressive.
So good.
Yes.
Oh,
Not for
oh,
the-
it's okay.
it's for the, how could it go live?
Great, yeah, so another case study here, New Jersey unemployment project, 600,000 people a year in New Jersey don't have insurance. Nava is replacing a 1980s era mainframe. The project was able to, the project used the Python and infra templates and was able to set up the project without dedicated engineers and saved approximately 10 weeks of development time. And finally, facing financial shock, a project that I have had the pleasure of contributing to as well. It's an income verification application, and is going to save, once it's done, hundreds of millions of dollars that CMS and other federal vendors spend on income verification. They were able to spin up their infrastructure. Remember that impressive diagram? In only 5 days, saved an estimated 4 weeks of development, and launched their pilot within 4 months of their initial commit. 2 of those projects are open source, and you can go visit their repos. And if you open an issue, Brandon here might respond to it, or if I don't get to it. So some more of the global impact. We've estimated we've saved 65 weeks of engineering work across 9 applications. You might be wondering, how do you measure that? We try and get an average of how long it takes for an activity. How long does it take to set up a front application? And that's how we have kind of tried to create those estimates. So yeah, next steps, vision and roadmap, continuing to make the small improvements that help make the deployment of the templates more effective. Some potential features that are under consideration are content management system, load testing, identity providers, notifications. I'm not sure what that CMS is, Lucas. We'll have to find out. I thought of you when I saw that one. how can my team use the platform? You can work with Nava. I would recommend that, but they're also, but you can also adopt them yourself. They're open source, and you can you have as much privilege within that code to do what we've done. If you have any questions or would like to learn more, you can contact me or Lauren's the vision behind this and has really guided this effort. So somebody get touch with us. Thank you. So we have some time for Q&A. 5 minutes. 5 minutes for Q&A.
Many projects are not ground up starters. How is this work modularized to people that pieces that maybe apply to them?
Yeah, so the question was how is this modularized, in case you can hear, how is this modularized to adapt to different types of projects? Within the infrastructure template, the services that are deployed in AWS are modularized as much as possible. You can turn them on and off, so to speak. It's not like the app store on your phone, but there's an intentionality around modularization within the Terraform code, and yeah, that's the main place of emphasis for that. And that the apps have a lot kind of are a great starter place, but we haven't over kind of indexed on those since there's so many different kind of directions that you could go in.
Oh, gosh, wonderful. Right. Are you gonna be working to expand metrics you report on, not just the cost savings upfront or the time savings upfront,
What
the accumulated savings?
what kind of metrics would be interesting to you?
Like as examples, the fact that you'll have staff with stronger experience with standardized platforms, the quality of the platforms, the sustainability projects, things like that.
We do keep a lot of metrics. I mentioned briefly, but we do keep a lot of metrics on our projects from a developer's perspective, engineering perspective. Time from branch commit to merge, number of open merge requests, frequency of commits to product or pushes to production. So with those, we can kind of see some things trending. But yeah, that's a good question. How do you create metrics that can dig a little deeper? It's hard because there's a lot of qualitative elements of it, but
It is hard,
think about
but it's a strong story to tell.
yeah.
And
yeah,
you got two sides. I think the customer and the company both stand to benefit a lot from strong adoption.
yeah. Thanks. Hiding.
Hi, Max Gaines from Policy Engine. Love the open source approach and like the Next.js developer chiming in is a great example of the success of that. I'm curious what kind of decision process got you guys to decide to do this open source? Was it internally driven? Were your clients interested in this? And kind of related, are there some kinds of projects that you would hope this could empower as a template for projects outside of Nava, and what would that look like in the future?
Yeah, I mean, again, I mentioned I think this is a model, and we have a lot of great projects that two of those examples are open source, and that's something that definitely this it can snowball in a way. Like doing things in the open makes it easier to do projects in the open. So those processes are something that are, important to us. I don't know, Shaw, if you want to, you were part of the, you were part of the kind of decision tree maybe that helps think about the open source impacts.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Hey, Max. That's a great question. I think ultimately, as a public benefit corporation, we are interested in the overall health of the ecosystem that we're a part of. And so we can make things easier for ourselves, but if there isn't the kind of long-term possibility of contributing to overall systems health, again, we're systems nerds, and so that felt like a missed opportunity. So I think it's and I will say the type of compliment I've received in the past about at least from a Nava perspective, a really important focus on craft and delivery. Jody and I talk about the kind of delivery model, the delivery focus all the time. But a comparison I've received in the past, which I think is a very flattering compliment to apply to what we're trying to do here, is actually Penn and Teller, where they in their magic show, they can show you exactly what trick they're pulling off, and they can give you all the steps, but then they can perform it anyways, and it still tricks your eye. And so, like, I think there is a level of pride in our work and our craft that I've reflected back in the work, taking that kind of posture. So I don't know if that's helpful for you from like the systems perspective and the craft perspective.
We are close to time. Maybe one more question.
It's exciting to hear about all of the downstream benefits for Nava. One of the things that I was curious hearing the story about the Next.js folks commenting on the feedback that we gave when we were looking at applying those upgrades. What do you think the opportunities are around Nava being able to contribute back upstream in terms of being able to provide benefits to partners that are working the open source like Next.js or React or other groups that are looking for open feedback and open collaborators that we leverage the technologies of currently?
Yeah, Nava does do.
Andy back there has contributed to the React library that we, the USDS React library that we use that I mentioned earlier. So there's certainly opportunity. I think on our project, I'd be excited.
Of that, yeah, it's something that really shows our competency to be able to step into that realm and to make sure that the solutions that we're building on behalf of government are part of those use cases, part of that code, and part of that process.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's it. How long's the break? There's gonna be a 10-minute break and then we'll have the panel. Thank you so much.
Okay, I will get started. Thank you. Thanks, Sean, Aaron. I am Kira and my pronouns are she, her, and I am Nava's editorial manager. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that we're highlighting in this year's report, and then I will introduce our panelists. Can everybody hear me, by the way? Yeah. Cool. So like Shah said, the theme of this year's report is improving every level of service delivery. So I'll begin with talking about one of our projects that aims to influence and improve ecosystem, that ecosystem being unemployment insurance. As most here probably know, the pandemic exposed weaknesses within our country's unemployment insurance technology. In response, the U.S. Department of Labor spearheaded efforts to help states modernize their unemployment insurance programs, funded through the American Rescue Plan, or ARPA. As part of this work, the department partnered with Nava to spearhead research that resulted in targeted recommendations for how states can improve delivery of unemployment insurance benefits. We also supported the department in publishing a report on how states are using ARPA funds to detect and prevent fraud, promote equitable access to unemployment insurance, and ensure timely payment of benefits. Given this work, we are delighted to welcome Andrew Stetner, Director of Unemployment Insurance Modernization at the U.S. Department of Labor. Welcome, Andrew. Zooming in a bit, the state of New Jersey's unemployment insurance program is an example of successful modernization. This year, they launched their new claimant portal, which enables people to apply for benefits in fewer steps than the legacy application, save and finish their application later, and apply on any device. We had the privilege of helping New Jersey build the claimant portal, and our iterative approach enabled us to minimize risk while quickly delivering value to New Jerseyans. We also helped implement an API that connects the claimant portal to the staff-facing backend. Representing the New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce Development, I'm pleased to welcome Commissioner Robert Asaro Angelo. Another state program that's delivering excellent services to its constituents is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Paid Family and Medical Leave. Since 2020, Nava has supported Massachusetts in building and maintaining the state's first ever paid family and medical leave, or PFML program. As part of our work, we helped Massachusetts develop the Paid Leave API and a backend API layer that enables several different state systems to communicate with the PFML website and with one another. As a result, the state's PFML program is more flexible, resilient, and human-centered. In addition to our work in Massachusetts, we began working with 2 more state paid leave programs this year. We're proud of these efforts and look forward to supporting a thriving paid leave ecosystem. Today, our paid family and medical leave expert is Tara McGinnis, founder and executive director of the New Practice Lab at New America. The New Practice Lab is focused on design and research to provide economic security to the public. The New Practice Lab has partnered with multiple states launching their paid family and medical leave programs and is an expert in this vital new policy. Welcome, Tara. Okay, so something that unemployment insurance and paid family and medical leave have in common is that people tend to need them during major life events. The federal government understands this and are connecting people with services they need during such times. Nava is working on the Facing Financial Shock project, which seeks to help people find the support they need to reestablish financial stability. We're helping the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services and the United States Digital Service increase access to programs like Medicaid and SNAP by streamlining the income verification process. We're thrilled that Patricia Peroso, a digital services expert at the United States Digital Service, working on the Facing Financial Shock project, has joined us today. Welcome, Patricia. So as you can see, our work this year has spanned programs, agencies, and levels of service delivery, from focusing on specific updates through end-to-end service delivery and even working on improving ecosystems. So with that, I will pass the mic to Karen, who will get the panel rolling. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kira. Hey everyone, can everyone hear me okay? Great. Great, so my name is Karen Turner, my pronouns are she, her. I'm the Strategic Communications Manager here at Nava, and I'm so excited to talk to this incredible panel about all the great issues that they're working on. Just a reminder that we're gonna have, 5 to 15 minutes or so for Q&A at the end. So think about questions you might want to ask, and we'll open it up both to folks inside the room and to everyone joining via the online event. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to direct my first question to you, Tara. So New America has worked with multiple states on improving their paid family medical leave programs. Tell us a little bit about how policy informs implementation and vice versa when it comes to programs.
Sure. Thank you for having me here. This is an amazing panel of people who I really admire and a room of people who are so focused on just learning and doing and making things better. Your question of how policy informs implementation and implementation informs policy is really my cup of tea. The New Practice Lab is an unusual organization that is equal parts in our recipe, policy, and product. And so often you have kind of in the world, technology companies with policy people, policy team with some technology people. We have a thesis and it shows up in our work on paid leave. I should honestly let Commissioner Angela speak about it because our first partner on Sprint for delivering paid leave was New Jersey.
We were your first, I didn't know that.
2019.
Experience.
So it's helpful, I'll tell you a little bit about how we do this. Now in 13 states in the United States have paid family medical leave. Only about 27% of workers have access through their employer to paid family medical leave. This means that, we have a long way to go to have all Americans have access to it. But in theory, every time we make a new policy like this, we should be exponentially improving our capacity. I think that is a project that a number of us are undertaking. New Jersey had paid family medical leave for a number of years, but wasn't seeing the uptake in the policy. So we gave the team in New Jersey a full, in-house Sprint team to get under the hood, talk to people using the program, talk to people who might have used the program but didn't, talk to the stakeholders in the business community, our employees about it, and get in the back end and see like what does data inside the system that maybe the administrators can't see every day, tell you about what to do. There have been a number of amazing changes that we can with it, and some of the learning is really basic. For example, job protection. Will I lose my job if I take this? Was people's number one question. Job protection is not under the authority of the Department of Labor where the project is housed. So the department didn't put anything out about job protection. That's the Civil Rights Division. But that was people's number one question. So if you can't answer it, you can't pass go. And you did creative things to make sure you can answer that question or be directed to the call line of their agency. Part of this process of implementation, learning for what's happening where you're doing something somewhere before you make a policy again. Connecticut was in the process of passing a new paid family medical leave program. There are kinds of things that you might not think, and as a former person who drafted and worked on policy laws, may not know it's just not the best idea to pick a date when the product team will be ready, or things like a lot of agencies have data that could help us with this, but unless we say really specifically that these agencies named in the law need to help on reaching people, then it's a territory fight for the agencies later. And so Connecticut took some of the advice of the delivery experience, very specifically data, like saying any data in these agencies will be used to help get paid family medical leave. And that's one example of where having the experience of delivering on the ground graduates into writing better code in the form of law that is more implementable. And that's really at the center of what we're doing now in a number of different states.
Thank you so much. Great. All right, let's actually move to you, Robert, since you mentioned New Jersey. So yeah, New Jersey is in this process of overhauling its unemployment insurance system in recent years to great success. So tell us a little bit about the importance of building these user-friendly portals for customers, for users, but also for a staff agency.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Nava, for having me. And Tara, I didn't realize that we were your first customer. That's awesome. So we still use those sprints every single day. We're currently going through modernization, not with Nava on that project, but use those findings every single day. And one thing I'm very proud of is that we've doubled the number of fathers using paid family leave through outreach in New Jersey. Question at hand, during the COVID crisis, and just for some background for folks who aren't as nerdy about this stuff as I am, during the first year of COVID, half of my counterparts across the country lost their jobs because they were thrown under the bus by their governor or the legislature, and it was none of their faults. Luckily in New Jersey, we have a amenable chain of command. My boss, my governor, was into asking us questions about what's going on. He realized it's going on in other states as well. And I say that because I ran for chair of NASDA, the National Association of State Workforce Agencies, because I didn't want any Department of Labor staff to go through what my staff was going through ever again. And that is implicitly tied with the customer experience. As worried as I am about folks who are eligible for unemployment benefits, I'm equally as worried for those who weren't eligible or who weren't understanding about why they were eligible or ineligible, because those are the ones making death threats to my staff. Those are the ones calling 17,000 times a day, keeping our staff from being able to talk to folks about you needed help. So when I talk to about any of our UI modernization or any of our modernizations, it's equally about the customer experience, which inherently ties to our staff experience. And I think that was a really good selling point to our staff because this stuff is not easy. Obviously, change of government is very difficult, but I love the idea of policy being code. I think that's a great way to talk about the interlockingness of this. But from day one, it was obvious that the better we communicated with customers and claimants, one, the less times they had to call and take up call center staff time, not because I want our staff to be doing nothing, because they had other claimants to talk to. From day one of the pandemic through recently, it was almost impossible to get through on the phones because so many people were calling over and over and over again. By the way, same thing with paid family leave as well. The more we can talk to folks about what's going on with their claim, it doesn't have to be yes or no on their benefits or how much they're going to get. Here's what's next. Here's the current status of your claim. Here's more information about the program. Here's what to do if you need financial help right now. So I'm interested in hearing about more about that. So giving them some kind of, to reduce their anxiety from having to call over and over again, giving them that peace of mind at least to know what's next. We're still striving for that. We're still working every single day to improve those communications, to let claimants know where they are in the process. There's no end to all this, right? There's no end to modernization. It's something I sort of try to gird our folks for, that this is not a waterfall project where one day we're going to flip a switch and everything's going to be done, that we're constantly improving, constantly hearing from our customers and claimants, and constantly, by the way, enforcing the new code, the new policy changes that are coming through. So I think they get it, that we can't go back to how it was before, not just for our claimants that we serve, but for our own staff's mental and physical well-being, quite frankly.
Thank you. Yeah, process is so important. And also I welcome everyone to like get very wonky with your answers because that's definitely this audience. So go for it. All right, speaking of unemployment insurance, so Andy, the U.S. Department of Labor, has invested so much in improving unemployment insurance systems since the pandemic, which, you know, exposed so many shortcomings in the national system. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those improvements?
Sure. So first, let me thank everyone for coming and also thank Nava for the great partnership. You guys lived your credo in continually adjusting your delivery, doing things that we never thought you'd do when you first came to us, and everything was, you know, stellar. I was just talking to one of your staff, and we look at the beautiful artifacts you left us on our website every day, and how meaningful they are in communicating what we want the system to become. So, you know, COVID was the perfect storm for the unemployment insurance system. Claims, regular UI claims increased 3,000% in 1 week, and then Congress passed 4 new programs, including for brand new populations that the UI program had never served, like the self-employed, where it was very difficult, to verify income. And to, you know, what you said, Tara, about, you know, specific due date. Well, Congress passed the CARES Act on March 28th, and benefits were payable on April 4th. So that was the expectation that Congress put on Rob and other people like that. So, you know, it was, you know, unsurprising that we had all the challenges, you know, that we had, despite, you know, lifting up the economy, huge delays in benefits and, you know, real challenges in preventing fraud. So Congress did pass American Rescue Plan Act, including $2 billion for UI modernization. And we could have done it the way that we've done it before, which basically is just divide up that money based on state size and just pass it right through and have them do big IT projects with the vendors that we all know about. And, you know, the benefit of those would come in 5 years. So we decided we weren't going to do it that way. We were going to take a more agile, incremental, and modular approach. We sent Tiger teams, multidisciplinary experts, you know, into states voluntarily to identify short and medium-term operational improvements that they could do. We gave grants to particularly focus on equitable access and customer experience. And the result of that was 600 different discrete projects on things like automation, including claim status portal, improving the online customer experience, bringing plain language into communication, each of them delivering the value along the way. We have also been focusing on the architecture of UI systems that were not resilient enough to respond to this increase in demand. That's a continuing issue for UI because UI is very low right now and unemployment is low in the country and it can spike very rapidly. It's spiking more rapidly than in the past in recent cycles. So we focused, we gave $200 million of that funding to states to really work on their architecture and their methodology, to focus more on agile development, modular and microservice infrastructure, and to move their services onto the cloud. And in doing the projects they're working on with us, focus on measurable improvements, either for their own processes or for their end users as a result of every project. So, we are making, tremendous progress. We've seen it, especially over the last year as states have taken our grant funding, implemented and seeing really results. Results, like you were saying, and fewer people making those calls over and over again, fewer duplicate calls for the same issues. If we can more clearly communicate what the individual needs and what's their next step, on their claim status project. Just another example I wanted to give. Before coming to the department, I had met Tara when I was at the Century Foundation, and we did a survey, and we talked to every single state that had gone through a large-scale modernization. And it was something in the 30s or 40s of the states. We found one of those states that had done user testing before they went live. And predictably, there was all kinds of problems, with the systems. That has changed. Customer user experience testing, customer experience measurement, it's becoming a nascent and more enduring part of the UI system. So we are continuing to do that work. I'm very grateful for Nava. One thing we want to do is we want to tell the story. That's why it's so important for us to be here tonight. Most people in this room probably themselves or knew someone who struggled to get their access to UI benefits, during the pandemic. And we want to kind of be out there saying, no, we are improving that so that customer experience will be better the next time the system is called on. Whether it's a natural disaster, like we're experiencing right now, with Hurricane Helene, or whether it's, something that's more national in scope. So we are making those concrete improvements to the system along the way to a larger scale transformation.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. And I really want to sort of move over to Patricia and talk about an issue that all of these programs kind of struggle with. But the Facing Financial Shock program, is looking to improve the customer experience for programs including Medicaid and SNAP. I really want to ask you about specifically in the income verification process and why streamlining it is such an important issue in this program.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for listening to me talk about income verification. I know that it's a niche topic and I'm excited to talk to you about it. I really identify with a point you made earlier, Commissioner, around the customer experience needing to work both for your caseworker or your staff and for the public. And I think income verification is a classic problem where it is working for nobody. Right? We have all of these means tested programs where in statute, we must check that you are eligible based on your income. And the tools we have are just not meeting anyone's needs. So when asking state leadership, income verification was the single biggest pain point on their plates. And when doing discovery with the public for people facing a financial shock, income verification was the single biggest pain point in their journey to getting government benefits. We'd like to solve both of those in one. I can keep talking more about why income verification, or I could stop there.
Push for enhanced wage records.
Go for it.
So that way UI systems get their wages more frequently than every quarter.
Yes. Oh my goodness. State quarterly wage data is exactly a problem. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
She said to go nerdy.
Yes. So you may or may not be aware, states collect quarterly records of your wage data. It's used for a bunch of different purposes. One is for means tested programs. So it's actually in statute that SNAP programs have to check your state quarterly wage data. And also your state quarterly wage data is not fresh enough to meet the SNAP requirements for how soon your data has to be eligible for a verification. So that is absolutely one way to do this. That is a very long-term project and can and should be done. Our team doesn't have that time horizon, so we've had to take a more iterative approach, and we've been focusing on facilitating access to data that you yourself own, right? Like you own your payroll account, right? Like your account with whoever is paying you, that is your data. And you can choose to facilitate access to that. And that as a way of getting sort of the source of truth from applicants themselves consenting to sharing their own data.
Can I follow a thread on this?
Please, yeah.
Which is, back to this loop of when the code is written into law and the implementation then becomes more complicated. In this process, the wage verification or income verification overall is a common pain point across programs that we've worked on all three of them together. And very recently, like in a kind of TA work on the law, someone had a draft that was going to pull on a wage database that didn't exist. Like before you decide that this is what you're going to verify, like that is a database that is variable across 50 states. And they're like, no, it exists. Like, yes, but in every other program it functions. So creating this feedback loop between what are the people for both frontline workers and users of a program and the next generation. I mean, we are creating new policy on all the time or redefining this. Similarly, across a wide range of programs, there would be some logic to using somewhat similar processes. So therefore, if you could do once income verification, but that is really again back to the design of where a family is defined 19 different ways or an income is defined 19 different ways, and for this it counts against your taxes. Really what the learning across all of these programs can be the next generation of creating policy services.
Yeah, and I think just kind of pulling on that more, talking about processes across different programs. I'm really interested in the relationship between federal agencies and state, as well as states between each other. And how can these bodies work collaboratively to improve and modernize service experiences across the board? This is for everyone, but maybe I'll start with you, Andy, because I know the Open UI initiative is something.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of our learnings in coming in, modernizing, working with USDS and others was, there's 53 different states. Their laws are different enough, and our authority as a federal partner, we can't tell them how to build their architecture. We can't tell them how to spend every dollar. So we wanted to really focus on more pulling them towards best practices rather than pushing down exactly how to do. And how do you create some structures for the states to be able to share code, to not have to reinvent the wheel every time that they're building a system. One very common thing that is happening, state X needs to replace their system. There was a state that was, a far-flung jurisdiction, literally fly around the country to 7 different states to see to look at different RFPs and see how to build their system. There's got to be a better way to do that. So we created what's called our Open UI initiative. The goal of that, we're working with the association that Robert mentioned that he's as the past president of, to think about what are the core modules in the UI system and what do they need to do? What is their function and what are the data in and data out? So you kind of create the specifications that become common. That allows, states to start building things that become more shareable. It also creates a framework for states that have open source technology or own their code to think about, okay, here's a way that I actually could share it. Because right now, states say, I'd love to share my code with another state, but I don't know how to take out the things that are just my state from the things that every state needs. So we're trying to make that possible to do. And so we have a website for that, the Open UI Initiative NASWA. So definitely recommend folks take a look at that.
I would just say, just going back to the initial presentation tonight, all these things that we have that are aspirational about enhanced wage records or better family leave policies or income verification, like the APIs that we now have in New Jersey will give us that chance to access that data in the future. Because the current state in New Jersey and other places, like, let's just say tomorrow, enhanced wage records were the thing around the country. Most states have to go beg their vendor to go, oh, hey, can you build me a new system to access that? Okay, well, get me a new statement of work and get me a new RFP and blah, 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 blah. It'll take 17 months. But we are now set up to be able to access that kind of data or data from other state agencies. Like, right now, talk to our Motor Vehicle Commission to get more data from them to help verify a bajillion things about our claimants. So that kind of flexibility that we have in our infrastructure lets us have better policy down the road.
Yeah, we've definitely had a problem with that. We have focused on states as the first customers of our sort of income verification service, with the concept that if we build it with states, we can force the rest of the federal government to get on board instead of going the other direction. I feel like there have been so many projects that have gone the other direction and then states it's not usable for us. And so we've really focused on the state experience of utilizing our services. At the same time, vendor lock-in is a real problem, and there exist a number of states that do not have the technical staff to be able to say to their vendor, this is unreasonable, and don't have control over their backlog in a way that you really need to be able to update and stay compliant, but also really focus on the customer experience, right? If your vendor is the one determining everything, there are states where people don't have enough of a say. And I think that's really a part of the skill gap, right? Like my background is as a software engineer. There are times and places where I'm able to say like, that is an unreasonable estimate. Or if that is the estimate, let's understand what's wrong with the system because your system should not take this amount of time to try to accomplish whatever improvement goal you have. And I think that there are a number of states that have really modernized. Like I want to call out like the Colorado Digital Service. I think they just had their 5-year anniversary, right? Like they are sort of pioneers on trying to push forward the state capacity. But right now there are a number of places that are, even if you are building services, not really ready to take advantage of them because of the issues just mentioned.
Great, yeah, I actually kind of building on that, I would love to hear about, we talked a little bit about process before. So thinking about that and this sort of iterative agile approach to government tech, why is that so important? Why is it so important to release in batches rather than all at once? Why don't we start with you, Robert?
I mean, just in my mind, that's what we've done with little success over the many decades of specifically unemployment, but plenty of other government programs as well. And quite frankly, sadly, even with COVID in the recent rearview mirror, many of my colleagues in other states have taken that same approach of a big waterfall project, and with great fanfare with their governors and everybody else, and talking about the new, because they wanted to have an answer. Here's what we're doing. We're getting a new system. We're procuring a new system. And here we're launching it today. Woohoo! But sadly, when I talk to many of them behind the scenes, they're absolutely miserable, and their staff is miserable because it doesn't work the right way. There's some little change they need to make. It's going to take them 5 months. That's something that seems simple. It's just really not how. I mean, it's not how the private sector does it. Another example in New Jersey, you mentioned that we launched our new customer facing portal this year, but actually we launched it last year, I think in October, to 1 user. And then we launched it to 10 users. Then we launched it to 10% of users, then 50% of users. So by the time we actually launched to 100% of users, it was sadly very anticlimactic. For all these years, to be like, here the day is finally going to happen. Here's the big day. And some Nava engineer just like changed the number from 50 to 100, and there's no explosions, there's no pyrotechnics, but that was like sort of like we had to like have these like positive therapy sessions about it, that it's okay, like this is okay that we did it this way, and that's why it's been so successful, and that's why, I mean, the numbers of calls from complaints from legislators or outsiders or articles about it. Well, part of me is like, I wish they gave us more coverage of this. I know that that's not reality. They don't want to give us coverage if it went poorly. So that's why I think the agile development way, quite frankly, I'm not going to disagree my friend to the left. I think the USDL can mandate that we use agile development. The USDL can mandate that any funding they send out has these kind of processes. I'm not saying Andy should be doing it, but maybe in the future. Because I really do think it's to the detriment. I understand the federated system that we have, and it's a federal unemployment system. Every state wants it on its own. And quite frankly, I think before COVID, I think a lot of states were way more about, this is our data, this is our thing, leave us alone, federal government. I think we're way more, most other states are way more open than they used to be about having more input from the federal government about how these things should be working. And quite frankly, we're never going to have a real solution unless we take a stronger stand against doing things the old way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree that the one core challenge, and I hope people in this room working with states can think about their role in this, is that state capacity, to be able to, work in that, because you definitely hear, on the business side, people saying like, my state is very limited capacity. I just need a out of the box solution. I can't think about anything else that would be different than that. And so we are really trying to, through our projects and the ways we have influenced the technical assistance provide to kind of build up that capacity, to build in that kind of smarter way. And we do think that, you know, we've seen it. We've seen states, you know, work, and Michigan's a great example. You know, they are replacing their backend, but they've been working on, you know, changing their claimant journey, mapping it, giving, you know, people, you know, guideposts and guidance how to work it using AI. So they're doing all these things that are iterative along the way, so that when they change their back end, like they're gonna have all that work and all that positive goodwill among their claimants. So it shouldn't be such a big thing. So I think we are seeing states, at least that are even going to change that big change, doing it in a little bit of a different way.
And speaking of claimant journeys, I want to talk about another process, wonky related topic. So why is factoring the customer experience and user experiences so important when it comes to building and improving these government programs? And I'll go ahead and start with you on this one.
Sure. Similar to why do you build small instead of building big? It doesn't work when you don't do it. You know, if we have plenty of examples of that, plenty of them like are in my gray swoosh, you know, I've been part of. I'd say there's a bigger piece at stake, which is like the current project for all of us is building public trust and being risky. And so at its essence, this practice, which has been refined in the product development and tech space of listening maniacally and learning and like the scientific method, making adaptations to make something better, is also a process that I think can bring us back to increasing public trust and in institutions and in government. And so really more of this, and there's, you know, there very advanced ways of doing this with a trade of, you know, like I have in my team of research and designers, but also there's lightweight ways like Commissioner Angelo does himself, which is just walking in the shoes of the experience of frontline workers and showing up in a call center and, you know, and reading the top 5 things that people are calling about. And so I think sometimes we get overly precious about what we mean when we talk about customer experience. We need the full gamut. That's what's going to really rebuild public trust.
I'm gonna steal that term, maniacal listening.
Yeah, and in terms of, you know, modernization and why it's so important, I'm really interested in modernization specifically and its relationship to just increasing access and really reaching users. So Patricio, let's start with you in terms of facing financial shock. You know, why is access such an important part of it?
Yeah, so this anecdote has nothing to do with facing financial shock. An unnamed contract and an unnamed agency had a number of requirements around the exact browser versions that the site needed to run on. Those were out of date, and basically no one trying to access the site used those browser versions. And so while the vendor delivered what was in the contract, users did not have access to this. And I think this gets back into some of the like agile development pieces of the discussion, right? Like if we are trying to build in a way for users to access our tools, we can't actually be writing waterfall contracts because we learn about the barriers to access as we put pilots out into the world, as we try things and we find out unexpected barriers that we weren't foreseeing. I also think there's some really interesting pieces around access where when states have the capacity problems that they had during the COVID pandemic, part of access is actually helping self-serve the 80% of customers that can self-serve so that phone lines are open for the 20% of people who cannot accomplish the task on their own. And so making sure that your sites are mobile friendly and people can load them on low bandwidth and all of those pieces add up to human beings being able to support the group of people who cannot self-serve and actually are available to help when needed. And I think that's been a focus of our work, is really trying to understand what is the way that we make this section of the population more efficient, and then for the other segments of the population that cannot be made more efficient by this process, what are additional tools that we're using to intervene, and also focus caseworker time on the cases that are really difficult and optimize the cases that are pretty quick and easy.
I guess my only addition to that, it makes you think about the principle of universal design, which is when you make things easier for people with disabilities, you make them easier for everyone. So I think you do both. You make it easier for that individual that's sophisticated. Talked to some recently, he's seen about his college graduates and his high school graduates in the States. Make it easier for them. Then it's gonna be more easy. It's also gonna be easier for that person who doesn't know how to use anything, but maybe someone in their family can show them how to use it. So that's, I think we do have to kind of be focused on that. I think the other thing I would say from my experience, modernizing a system is not necessarily with equitable access to benefits. Unless it's an intentional goal of the modernization to improve access to benefits, it can actually have the opposite effect. I remember before I came to the department, saw a demo of a SNAP modernization. I thought that's a beautiful demo. It looks great. That site looks. Like it asked all the questions, and but then touched someone on the ground. Said, "Oh no, no one can access SNAP in our state. It's so complicated. Can't do it. No one can do it." So I think that it just because something everything looks great, seems like it's very powerful, doesn't mean it's gonna increase access benefits. We have to be intentional that that's our goal, and we have to measure it. We have to measure, does the system, is it making it harder or easier, and for who? Which demographics are challenging, and then we need to make our tweaks to it. So I think we have a long way to go, at least in UI and our systems, to taking the attitude that the most important day is not the day you launch, but the day, a month later when you're taking in the input of how it's going, and you're thinking about the changes you make.
Just to hit on that a little bit, I think it's obvious that folks that we need to serve all the time don't have access to technology at all. So better websites, better systems might not help them. But it's not just about making, we've already talked about, letting our folks spend time on payments that need our help. But also before COVID, we didn't have in-person presence during COVID. We weren't going to return to it because it was so much more efficient time-wise for those who were able to call us. We got through way more claims that way, blah, blah, blah. But that really left a gap for folks who came to one of our one-stops in 19 locations across the state. But so having our folks be more efficient and having our new call center system be more efficient and get more calls through, it gives us our staff space and our staff time to be in those offices and have a less efficient process time-wise, but have that face-to-face contact that so many claimants need and desire. So it's definitely a resource issue for sure. Quite frankly, there's no increase in our resources coming anytime soon for the most part. So having those efficiencies in your technology, while it might not directly be helping those folks, it gives us other freedoms of time and resources to give them more resources.
I think this question of modernization versus access is actually really important. And Andy, I'm looking at you because the federal government, the American Rescue Plan is not the first time we invested millions of dollars in the modernization of the UI system. The ARA, the rescue plan of the Obama era, invested $50 million in modernization efforts that all 50 states did and met their plans on prior to COVID. And so modernization as a goal allowed anyone to define what is modern. It wasn't about faster customer service, more equitable delivery, more people using the program.
Better ETA reporting program.
Or whatever your state determines. So I think when we get focused on either a particular aspect of technology or modernization itself, I think we lose sight of really naming access as a goal. And so who cares if it's I think modernization is a goal. I really ask, is that going to get us what we need? We didn't for the first round.
Oh, yeah, I think that's certainly a core learning for us. That's not just about, replacing a mainframe system like Robert has and 22 states still have 1980s based systems, or replacing where modernized systems, some of us that came 2003 with a new system. It's really, what are the goals behind it? What are you aiming for? And that's what we try to bring to this. And Congress gave us specific goals that would help to sue equal access to benefits, timely payment of benefits, and reducing fraud. So they gave us goals not about tech modernization, but actually about the end results of what that modernization would do.
Yeah, and I think just building on that, you know, all of us here are civic technologists in the room, and I think so many of us do maybe get super stuck on smaller details, or we get burned out on some of these other barriers that we're facing. So I'm curious for all of you, just to kind of end this before we open it up. How do you sort of think about how we can kind of think about that big picture of systemic change and this long process of modernization? It's such a big challenge to create systemic change. So how can we kind of prevent ourselves from getting stuck on these smaller things and burning out?
I think, that's focused only on agile, but I think that's such an important part of the process. And I think the process behind getting to agile is very difficult for states because that's just not how procurement is done generally. So the learning curve for our procurement and budgeting staff, and quite frankly, our fiscal monitors, whether it be at USDOL or US Treasury during our ARPA funds, they're used to seeing a contract that has everything laid out for the next 3 years, what the costs are going to be, and what's going to be going on next year, what's the deliverables. And it's hard to get folks to realize that it doesn't always work that way with agile development, which means that the most successful programs are going to be something new and difficult for the folks who are looking at our funds to comprehend. And if you talk to anybody in government who's been in government for a long time, especially career staff, the things they're most scared of are audits and findings. And so I think that being able to, this is super wonky and down in the weeds, but we really need to do a better job of educating our own state staff, fiscal staff and other departments and our Department of Labor about how this process can work. And it's really, quite frankly, in my mind, the only way to successful big picture.
I guess I would sort of look back on how much progress we've made in the civic tech community writ large, right? Like I work at USDS. USDS just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. And I talked to USDSers who were here 10 years ago, and there are just some basic tools of software development that they were just spending hours and hours fighting to try to get access to, that the people at USDS now we take for granted, right? Because those battles were already won. And I think it can be really demoralizing when you're in the trenches on your specific battle, trying to push that needle forward, and sometimes taking that step back and going like, we actually only existed for 10 years. Look at all of the progress we've made in 10 years. And that like, there are things that people tried really hard to accomplish and failed in their time. And that still moved the needle forward so that when the next group of USDSers came and picked up that problem, it was just that much easier. There's this metaphor we've been talking about as sort of like a bit of a relay race where like each person takes the baton for their time at USDS and passes it along in a better place. And you don't necessarily know what, if you think your project failed, like you don't actually know who's going to pick that back up a year, 5 years down the line and be able to take it that next step because of the input.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I'm going to open it up now to everybody else, unless we're all good. Great. So yeah. So if folks have questions in the room, we can start there, and then we'll also have questions online as well. So I believe we have a mic. Yeah. And yeah, Aaron, if you want to go ahead and get started.
Thanks. Are there any initiatives, Robert, that you're aware of? You mentioned improving the procurement and educating the actors. Are there any initiatives that you're aware of that are doing that, or any kind of light at the end of the tunnel in terms of improving that aspect of this?
Not that I'm aware of. Listen, I would say that the waterfall vendor lobby is very large and experienced and moneyed, and they know how to work things, and they have all kinds of associations. And so I don't know if there's an analog for agile companies, but I would recommend making one because that you need to have that kind of presence out there to host CTOs and CFOs and to go to different conferences and explain about this. Work with legislatures about how to make it easier in state procurement law about how to go about this. And not to be crap, I mean, quite frankly, you need better lobbyists to make all this stuff easier for our implementers, right? I mean, we can't, a lot of this challenge wasn't because I or my CFO didn't want to do this stuff. It's because we had to go through, past practice, state law, and thank goodness for the GSA schedule, we were able to hop onto that, but that was even difficult. So I think having some kind of, body that's going to be out there educating about this and quite possibly pushing for changes to state or federal law about making this process easier for folks is, I think, something that's needed. And, most of the battles or hurdles for government are in policy that are probably were good policy at the time about, I don't know, environmental regulations or making sure it's not, it's not corrupt. You're not giving it to the governor's friend or whatever it may be. And all of them sure had a great purpose, but now they've all combined to really just stymie and stifle innovation, at least quick innovation that serves our customers. Sorry, I didn't sound so dour about it. Maybe
Yeah.
it'll great. Here's the hope.
I think hopeful answer,
Okay.
which is that there is a federal program. The acronym is DITAP. I cannot remember for the life of me what the letters stand for. I'm sorry, but it is a program that USDS is pretty heavily involved with that trains federal procurement workers to learn about Agile, to better understand Agile procurement. If any of you are feds, consider signing up your procurement team to take DITAP. My understanding is that they shadow Agile software teams and actually get to be involved for, I think it's like a 2 to 3 week shadow session as part of the program to better understand Agile development, really like live and breathe what those meetings are like and the outcomes you can sort of see by following those processes. I do not believe it is available for state workers at this time, but hey, it doesn't hurt to ask.
We're always second fiddle. We're used to it. Don't worry.
I also think it's a thing where honestly, like, it has improved over time. And so if it becomes a program that is expanded, you will now get the benefits of the iterations that they have taken within themselves.
And one thing I would say, part of my role is to, interface with the department with members of Congress, and I think they want to know how to do things better. They ask, us, how can we help in this process of technology development so we don't invest in money in projects that fail. So I think there is openness to new ideas about how the statutes and how the funding could, go out that would make a difference.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
I'd presume that states like California, Texas, because they have much larger budgets and programs, get a lot of attention and influence. How does the diversity of states handle in this regard? Smaller states need these kinds of things. Maybe there's a cadre for them or not, but I guess how do you partner with states to deal with this fact that the biggest states that could do the most good probably are not?
I mean, one thing is, I would say, at least in some of the programs, and you guys may disagree, there's actually a lot, it's not that much different than it takes to run a program in Rhode Island versus California. Like, yes, at different scale, but all that is just as much complexity in the rules, it's just as much need for income verification. So I think one of the challenges is that the smaller states, they need just as much sophistication. And one thing that was a positive that I've seen in some of the smaller states have taken that actually to really embrace more agile development, to embrace open source, to embrace it. We're only going to build something in this state that my team can manage.
I was just to add to that, New York, California, Texas. So basically, we're all funded on both states are 100% federally funded for all their UI costs, for all the payment for staff, technology, whatever it is. So it's based on population. So obviously, New York, Texas, California have humongous federal UI budgets. So like Andy said, they need to write the same program or whatever, or make the same system as Rhode Island does. But Rhode Island only has 1/100th of the funding to make that happen. So it is a major challenge. I think more and more states, I think even ever since COVID, more states are having more state funding put towards UI admin. But it's not sustainable. That's why, quite frankly, like Andy said, open source and agile is even more important, because there needs to be better pathways for California's learnings with federal dollars be able to be shared with Rhode Island, Vermont, and other smaller states at the same time. But unfortunately, every state, even though it's a federal program, every state has its own UI rules and policy, which is also another huge challenge. Like I would guess probably no two states that are exactly the same. At all, not even close.
Yeah, I think we.
Hey there, Julius Chang with Department of Health, and this is a fascinating conversation for me because as a procurement specialist within the department, I can't imagine not or putting out a requirement today that is waterfall. So, it's I'd love to see how states could, follow what the federal government is doing. I've been trained in agile and agile practices for ever since I joined for 10 years ago. And I hope that maybe this is an example working with Nava on the Advanced Hill project, how we can showcase how agile development will true public benefits faster than traditional methods as a future use case for those days like this. But on to my other question, or my actual question, Randy, you mentioned that early on in your tenure with Department of Labor that user testing was a major deficiency of a lot of these state programs. What did it take to convince these states to incorporate that into their procurements to actually achieve better results in this next round of modernization?
I think it's a couple things. One, that, we had some funding to really prioritize it and talk about it. But I also think that was an ingredient. I think the bigger ingredient was you had millions of Americans really frustrated with the customer experience. And you had governors in the state, some of them making the bad decision, just firing people. But I think also recognizing, okay, we really have to improve this program, and if we're going to build it, we have to really respond to all these, comments. And so I think, and as people start doing it, I do think they see it works. It works to make it better. If you want to update your claimant status portal to get less calls to your call center, it really does make sense to talk to people of what their pain points are. I think that they're really struggling to understand.
I'll just say real quick, I mean, even though it's better than the one state Andy mentioned before, it's not that much better. A lot of states still are not doing user testing. However, because of COVID, at least we almost had like live user testing of our old system. Because we had so many comments through legislative portals, and within a month or two of March 17th, we had an online like referral system for the legislative offices. I can't tell you what a trove of data that is for how our system was failing people. So it wasn't like we were sitting there with them and taking notes. We'd hear from so often, like, especially when it comes to the PUA programs, other federal programs, what was wrong, how our application was failing them, or whatever it was. We just had so much data and we like, when the first thing coming in, we're like, hey, UI director, we're hearing this. Oh, no, that's not a thing. That only affects very small population. Well, when there's 1.5 million claimants, that small population is now 20,000, 30,000 people. So with that, I think all states, however they're collecting their data, do have like live experience of user testing by accident during COVID.
I also just want to add, our experience working with states has been that very few have the full picture of the user experience, right? So there may have been user testing on a specific part of the website or a specific, or just the website generally, but they don't have a full user journey map or a process map to understand the actual end-to-end number of touch points that happen and the ways that lack of clarity on the site create these like cycles of touch points because the applicant didn't understand, so they submit the wrong things, and the caseworker has to reach out, and then that's all verbal, and none of that's written down anywhere, so then they still submit the wrong thing, and it takes a number of tries to get it right. And I think that's sort of like the next level up as we continue to prioritize customer experience, is the full end-to-end journey, and like from application to receipt of benefits. How many touch points were there? Were they online? Were they via mail? Were they in person? Right? Like understanding that end to end is, I think, something that we should all be striving towards.
Yeah, my goal is to have like, you go to the doctor and if you're on an online system, they get an after visit summary. I want every time somebody talks to us or touches anyone, that they get an after visit summary of what are their current benefits? What is the next step they have to do? What's the medication you have to get, or giving us information, or what surveys need to answer, or do your ID verification, just as all, it's like a standardized form, and they can see how it changes throughout the process. But that might.
Great. Any other questions in the room? Yeah, go ahead, Greg. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Hi, Commissioner.
Hey, Will.
You talked a few times now about the resource constraints. Do you have a sense on what funding increase the states would each need to actually start meeting the modernization efforts that you would like to achieve on an annual basis?
It's certainly been very expensive in New Jersey, which is, we've been luckily, with ARPA funding and Andy's help and USDA support, and some state funding from other ARPA sources. I don't know enough about what that would, but it would be a significant portion of admin funding, just to have, quite frankly, I feel like the cost is, and not to scare folks, it's unlimited, because modernization should never be over. So it's, looking years out, and like I said, some states have separate admin funding, and God willing, there'll be a bill up in New Jersey on Monday about that as well, which will, it would be a game changer, for us, for sure, to make sure that what we've done already in New Jersey thing. But I'm sure that folks are out there who have estimates, about what that would cost. But I would hope that over time, and as we're doing a better job of sharing information and open source, those costs will continue to go down.
I think we had one more question here in the front.
I'm curious. So in the different states, and I guess the federal government as well, you have Department of Labor over here doing unemployment. You've got one or more other departments over here administering various other programs. And I'm curious if you've seen some of the successes or lessons learned from the unemployment work being adopted by other departments, or vice versa, other ones that have, brought stuff that's been adopted by UI, or even working together for, for people who are applying for multiple of these at the same time.
Yep, certainly, great question. Certainly, even our own department, Kara talked more about our work on paid family medical leave in New Jersey. We're going through that modernization now. We have lots of learnings from our UI modernization, which is, still ongoing, obviously. Some of those learnings we're taking advantage of, some of them we're forgetting things too quickly. But I think that, especially when it comes to the customer service side of things and the call centers, how to deal with backlogs. Like I know that we've been discussing for example, New Jersey, we have a property tax rebate program called Anchor, that is somewhat new. And the folks from our innovation team, sort of a bunch of like USDS alums and other, folks like that, who introduced us to Nava and Agile development in the first place. They also work with them. So I know that they're implementing their learnings from our call center, how to make that more efficient with that program as well. So yeah, we're just definitely seeing a lot more of that. I certainly wish, sort of tried to say breaking down silos, but it's always the goal of everybody. But obviously, there's different statutes in place and different program policies. But we're always trying to, frankly, I'm trying to warn my colleagues all the time. But I think it's hard for them because most of them don't have a program that's going to have the impact that a UI program would have when there's a pandemic like that. But yeah, we're always looking to share that with other divisions internally to our department, which is vast, and externally as well.
I think really often it doesn't jump necessarily from department, like all of a sudden Health and Human Services doing it over here in the comptroller's office there. But it does travel with the people you invest in. And so, I mean, just hearing you, Jillian Gutierrez, who is the first chief customer service officer of UI,
the UI director of the UI office of UI modernization,
was the lead partner in the paid leave uptake improvement process. Or in my own experience with our sprints with states, we'll often have someone who we invested deeply as a commissioner of X in state, and then they show up as the commissioner of X in the federal government or in another state. And so the kind of investment in a capacity.
Is that a thing? From state to state?
Like
Okay.
someone who was like a lead in childcare agency somewhere gets recruited to the next state that expands childcare and brings with them, in paid leave, we have at least 2 paid leave directors who left one state and moved to another state and brought the experiences of their state with them to another. And so I think that kind of investment in a team, pays dividends, and investment in agency leaders pay dividends in a way that is like not necessarily jumping in a state from one location to another, but that we've seen that numerous times. The practices get advanced.
I would say that some of this coordination across agencies is actually a policy issue more than a desire, to work together. So we had some successes in that. There was a law passed in 2019 that allowed programs like ours that are federal state partnerships to access treasuries do not pay data. So now we can get access to that data and pass it to our states so they can use the same data that federal programs use to see, for example, whether someone's fraudulently applying with deceased individual's social security number. Well, we had to reinvent the wheel because we didn't have access to that data before. So that it really often is a policy issue why different programs aren't working together as well as they could be.
And from the facing financial shock work, that is kind of explicitly our goal, right? The Biden-Harris administration put out the customer experience executive order back in December 2021. And it basically says agencies work together to focus on the customer experience. Sure, no one approved that as the summary, but we'll work with it, right? Like the entire point is that we are bringing agencies together to say, like, we need to focus on how we deliver benefits to the public and make sure it meets the public in their moment of need, whether that is like us facing a financial shock, or as you are about to have a child, right, or approaching retirement, right? That a number of government agencies should be supporting you in that time, and we should be working together to accomplish that. So we've been sharing out our learnings with all the agencies we're working with. We've also been sharing out our learnings with the states that we're partnered with. We have working groups with the states that we are piloting in, where states get to come together and talk to each other and collaborate and ask questions and provide feedback. And we've found that that's been a really helpful way to sort of spread some of the learnings of our work.
Thank you. I want to make sure are there any questions coming in through online that we might have missed? Okay, great. We're at time, but if there's any more questions, maybe one wrap up. No, all right. I think that was a great question to wrap on. So thank you so much. This was fantastic. And yeah, thank you everyone.